North London is red. This is the Arsenal Reaction Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is our Arsenal Reaction Show, joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for tuning in, for joining me, and for making this a part of your morning routines. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've had a fantastic week so far. I know that last week was pain. It's fair to say. I think it was just pain in the end. And of course, this week sees a change. This week has changed things up for us, and there is plenty of reason to rejoice and be happy after a win in the North London derby. Brings us back down to earth, back down to the realism of what this team and this club and everything to do with it is all about, I think. And certainly there's a lot of different avenues and narratives to talk about in today's show. But before we do, as always, I want to jump into the chat box and say good morning. Barry T, Amesy, Jitty, Stevie, Temi, Olawale, Paul, Carl, Jamil, Andy, James, Granddaddy Gooner, Paul. We've got Lars and other Paul and Andy and Elder and Tom and other Tom as well. Adrian, Brian, Rowan, Brad. We've got Senki. We've got Red Star. We've got Mark, we've got GZ4, we've got Adrian and Mark and others too. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. It is hugely appreciated. If you could drop a like on the video, that would also be great. Of course, we do try and reach our daily target of 1,000 likes. Last week, I was not going to press you for it. Last week was horrid. Last week was really dour and down, and the last thing you need is some content creator going, please like my video. But please like my video today. I really would appreciate that. So thank you to you all. I really do appreciate you being here. So without further ado, let's jump straight into today's slides. A win that could change a season is how I have described yesterday's victory. It was never, was it? It was never going to be straightforward. It was never going to be just a comfortable 3-0 win. It certainly looked like the way the game was starting that Arsenal would eventually just score the first and then they'd get the second and then the third would come at some stage. But we do not do things by halves unless it's a team halving our own score. We have to make things as absolutely as hard for ourselves as we can. And yes, there was some misfortune along the way, but plenty of fortune finally turning in Arsenal's direction, which, if indeed that is to stick around, could be a big difference between now and the end of the season. The lineup, I think, was as expected, besides maybe one player. I talked in my team how I had Sterling, Havertz and Martinelli as my front three for the fixture. But everybody else was what I expected. Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Lewis-Skelly, Partey, Rice, Ødegaard making up the back eight of the side, with, of course, Sterling getting just his second Premier League start of the campaign. We'll talk more about some of the individual performances a little bit later on. Oh, that's the wrong order. Why have I done it that way? Have I not talked about... I've not included the Spurs goal, because I'm salty about Spurs scoring. Clearly, we'll come back to those slides. We'll talk about the goal that we conceded and how we started the game first, I think. And it was a very dominant start to the fixture. We were camped inside Spurs' half, balls kind of being peppered around the Tottenham box. Couldn't really necessarily find our way through as much as we would like. It was a really depleted Tottenham backline with Dragusin and Gray and Kinski in goal, who looked flappy. Havertz had a chance where he slid on the goalkeeper and nearly won the ball back to score what would have been a very fortuitous goal for Arsenal. But there wasn't nothing major really made. And then, of course, the goal comes from a position where Arsenal, ironically, have conceded a set piece initially, and the ball kind of gets recycled and then eventually falls to Heung-min Son on the edge of the box, who smashes a shot that takes a wicked deflection off of William Saliba and curls around a helpless David Raya into the back of the net. And at that point, my head is in the sky because I'm just thinking, not again, like how we can be so dominant and create the chances and then we go a goal behind. And it's so common that it's happening. And it's very, very frustrating. It's very, very frustrating that once again, kind of an early, not an early chance, but just one of the earlier chances of the opposition side goes in. And it's been a bit of a story of Arsenal's season that we can look so solid and we can look so resilient. But when one chance happens, because we limit the opposition to so few of them, it just tends to be the one that finally beats the goalkeeper. And it was very fortunate that it took the deflection to go in. And I felt like the fan base in the stadium was split at that point. I thought there was half the ground that really did get behind the team. And the atmosphere was good, for the most part in the stadium. But I really did feel like it needed something from the players after Spurs scored. I got the sense that the crowd, there was a reaction when Spurs scored. There was a cheer. There was definitely a response from some, but it wasn't like, when Saliba scored that own goal against Leicester. It wasn't like that. And it was going to take something from the players to lift the fans in the ground, I think. And they got it. Of course, it was Gabriel, who, let's be honest, I don't know why I spelled that wrong. I must have been very tired on the way home from from the game. But that, for me, that is Gabby's goal. I know it's a very obvious Solanke own goal, but it's all about what Gabby does and the delivery from Declan Rice, which was once again absolutely astonishingly good. How Arsenal can put those types of corners into the back post and they just cause so much chaos. The goalkeepers can't reach them. Defenders find it hard to deal with them. And we're so dangerous at them that yet again, we get another opportunity. And Gabriel has a huge part to play in forcing the ball back off Dragusin and off of Solanke and into the back of the Tottenham net. Now, it's not a corner. You have to say it. It's not a corner. We get very lucky. And it made me think back to when I was writing a referee review piece after the Chelsea draw. And in that game against Chelsea, Arsenal were denied a blatant corner. The ball cannoned off of Wesley Fofana's legs and went out for a goal kick. So, as I wrote in my morning piece today, to borrow Manchester United's tweet from the other day, justice. Arsenal got the corner that they deserved to get at Chelsea, but were not given despite coming off of a Chelsea player. Well, Arsenal got a corner coming off of their own player in this game. And it's still one of those mad things to me that we still sit and these decisions can be got wrong. And it makes you think, why are there not more officials around the pitch on all sides rather than just two that can only go up to the halfway line? But certainly I was not complaining by any stretch of the imagination. And then soon after that, we're leading. Thomas Partey with a very good challenge and then a really good ball out to the left-hand side. I think it's Odegaard that gets it in the end, that gets the opportunity to play the pass, and it's a very good pass. And then, this season, Leandro Trossard has not been the goal-scoring fanatic that he was last season. He just hasn't. He's not been that whatsoever. And to see him get that assist, even though obviously Trossard does the majority of the work, and you could argue that the goalkeeper Kinski, probably a better goalkeeper, might do better with it. It's definitely something that was needed. It was. I think it's something that that Trossard definitely needed to see hit the back of the net. I think it will do him the world of good, and I think it will do his confidence much, much more as well. It was just a very, very important goal for Arsenal that ended up being the winning goal in the game. It shouldn't have been the winning goal. We should have won by more. But Trossard getting that goal, very important indeed. I want to pause for a second to talk about the two best players on the pitch, though, which was Declan Rice and Myles Lewis-Skelly. My goodness gracious me. Shall we start with Rice? I think Lewis-Skelly is probably the headline act. Rice, yesterday, in the left 8 position, was really, really good. Ignore the corner deliveries. Ignore those for a second. How he broke up play, how he outfought the Tottenham midfield. I mean, of all the positions on Spurs' pitch, their midfield was the one that was most to nearest full strength with Basuma and Sarr and Bergvall. I thought Bergvall would have had a good game as well. Rice is just inevitable almost in how solid and consistent and how much he delivers in each game. He, as Paul says here, he covers every blade of grass. I think I gave him an 8 out of 10. There were other players on the pitch that I thought made a couple of mistakes. Partey, of course, made 2 big errors actually in the game, which could have proven in the end really costly. Thankfully, it didn't. But Rice managed to be really consistent throughout the performance. Saliba made a key error as well in the first. Early in the second half, also made a mistake. But there was just nothing. Rice didn't put a foot wrong throughout the game whatsoever. Myles Lewis-Skelly, however, woof. I love this kid. He's so strong, in what he does. He holds players off. He plays kind of these passes that you'd expect of a player 6 years his senior, and just enjoys himself on a football pitch. These pictures you'll see on the screen, the shushing of Tottenham fans, the way in which he kind of just G'd the crowd up as he left the pitch and just breathed it all in. I asked Arteta after the game. I really wanted to kind of ask Arteta. I tried to angle the question in the best possible way I could regarding his own personal feeling about the way in which he feels of the achievement of bringing through a player. I said, Saka and Smith Rowe, they were here when he arrived. Yes, he established them in the team and developed them to the players that they are now. But Myles Lewis-Skelly is a player that came through the academy and then broke into the senior training setup and then broke into the senior team and is now making starts in North London derbies in massive games when there are other options on the bench. And I asked him, how does it make him feel to have been able to do that? And naturally, he gave me it makes everybody at the club very proud. He's never going to bite, I guess, to that and talk more personally. And I wanted him to, because I think, there's been so much scrutiny. I think for all the people, there was so much energy last season for criticism toward Arteta for not using youngsters. I have not seen anywhere near the same level of the opposite for them being used. By Waneri being given opportunities and starts in games, and of course Myles Lewis-Skelly being given these opportunities. I'm not seeing the same energy in the other direction, and maybe that's on you, maybe that's just me not spotting it. But I do ask the question, why? Why was there so much energy last season to bash the manager for not using the youngsters enough, and now we've brought one through, starting in an North London derby and playing that way? Why is there not the same amount of energy in the other direction? I don't know. I'm not sure. But I think the praise, absolutely, as Suga says, the praise needs to be, but never is, as loud as the criticism is. And certainly I think it's worthy of it. But yeah, brilliant player. Calafiori's in a bit of trouble, I think, in terms of his future. We've spent like 35 to 40 million pounds on a player that can play left back, and you get one come along whom, if Myles Lewis-Skelly was on the market, goodness me, what would he be worth these days? I want to talk about Sterling. He's something of an enigma, really, isn't he? He's a real mystery player, because I want to be positive, but I always felt like he left me wanting more in the game. He was energetic. He was sprightly. I use those words all the time when talking about him. He was just not as direct. And fans around the press box were getting very irritated by Sterling. Really irritated by him. And now I don't know if it's just because it's like, I don't think it's, how do I put this? I don't think it's because necessarily that there's this kind of reputation attached to Sterling. This is only his second Premier League start of the entire campaign, it's worth pointing out. Maybe Soup's right. Sterling causes the opposition trouble, but he has no end product. That's a really good way of putting it. It's like bit of a blunt knife, maybe, as an analogy. Like there's a lot of threat, but then when it comes to dealing that damage, it's not necessarily there. I think that would I start him at the weekend, swap him around? I'm not sure. I don't think I would. I think I'd start Martinelli and Trossard for the game against Villa. It's a tougher game, of course. It's really, and yeah, I think that's probably fair from Daniels as he worries about Sterling's lack of defensive tracking back. That said, he did track back more in this game than he had in previous games. But yeah, I think sometimes he creates situations that are too easy to defend. And, we scored both of our goals in the first half, it's worth pointing out, when he was on the field. We didn't score any more goals once he came off the pitch. And Clive says he's a 30-minute player. He ran out of puff, and maybe that's why it's probably best to bring him off the bench in the game against Villa at the weekend. I think that's probably what will happen. Christopher says he's lost his fizz, no speed. He slows the play down all the time. It's very frustrating. That's probably a good way of describing it. The last thing I want to mention before we go into part 2 and talk a bit about Rice and Havertz as well is Arteta, because I think he enjoyed that one. I love this picture. This picture is great. I love Albert Stuyvenberg in the background as well. You can just kind of see him, but Ashley Cole lingering in the background. It's a great photo, and of course Stuart McFarlane who takes it. It's just, this fixture can energize, it can break hearts, it can set nerves on the absolute edge of catastrophe, North London derbies. And the relief as the full time was, because there was nervy moments at the end. I mean, goodness gracious me, Pedro Porro hitting the post, the Saliba and Spence into the box, and Spence goes down. It's never a penalty, but your heart's in your mouth, and you're unable to take the game further. And Arteta said, afterwards, the last question I think he was asked in the press conference was, were you a little nervous towards the end? And he was like, yeah. That's what he said. He was just like, oh, yeah, we should have killed the game. We should have put the game to bed earlier. And it's so true. It's so true. That we should have killed that game earlier. And it's a similar story to other games, like the games of last week. It's very, 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 very frustrating that we are in this. And I just sit enamored by Arsenal sometimes, and I sit frustrated by their inadequacies. But when we get the result, that is all that matters. Right, shall we go to part 2? We've got Premier League table to look at as well. Arsenal, of course, closed the gap therefore to 4 points. Liverpool have a game in hand. That game will be played in February away from home against Everton, who will be under new management, of course, after the sacking of Sean Dyche. It's probably not a good thing for this game, but it is what it is. The gap opens to Nottingham Forest. And Newcastle, of course, won their game last night. They're up into 4th place. Chelsea dropped down to 5th, 2 points ahead of Manchester City. Aston Villa are on equal points with City, and Bournemouth on 1 point behind them as well. The Premier League games at the weekend, just to give you an idea of who's coming up next for everybody else. Arsenal are at home to Aston Villa. Liverpool are away to Brentford. Let's hope that is a victory for the home side. They've got a very good home record. Let's hope they do something. Chelsea are at home to Wolves. Man City are away to Ipswich. Nottingham Forest are at home to Southampton. Spurs away at Everton. Man United at home to Brighton. And that's the relevance of the top half. So, yes. And then there's an actual week off for Premier League action, but that's because we got Champions League football to talk about after that, and European action will be back in N5. Right, let's go to part 2, shall we? And your questions and more right after this. Right, this is part 2 of the show where we go into the comment section, we go into the chat box, we go into your questions, thoughts, queries, and more, and get some of your feeling as well. Obviously, Arteta was asked after the game about transfers, and so was Declan Rice. I want to talk about that Declan Rice interview. I think there's been some misconceptions around it, that Declan Rice interview that I want to address. But Arteta on transfers was very, what's the word? Committal. It was very committal indeed, it seemed, in how he spoke about the idea of Arsenal doing business when being interviewed. And he said, for sure, we are going to try on the market and we want to reinforce attack. We've lost two big players, Bukayo up to 3 months. That's a bit more of a confirmation around what we thought. And that's where we are at. But Jesus will be out for, of course, a long time, he says. But yes, it's very much a frustration. It's very much the reality of where we're at right now is that we need reinforcement. And fans like Magambo don't really help when they say not buying anyone. Let's wait and see. It's always I don't know why. Maybe it's just a mentality thing. Like, it's funny, isn't it? Like, the mentality of the fans, they want more from the team, they want more from the club, and yet they resign themselves to not signing anybody. If I was making a prediction at the start of the window, I did get a sense that it would be very challenging to get players in. But I don't. If we were to sign nobody after Arteta's been that committal about the idea of adding, we want to reinforce the attack. He's giving fans that encouragement, and I think he needs to. I don't think we're in a situation where now he can kind of play this off at all. But certainly, I am very much of the mind that, I'm very much of the mind that we need that, and Arteta is giving that to us. So yeah, that is certainly a positive thing. So I'm looking forward to the idea of that as well, and the idea of Arsenal. The idea of Arsenal bringing in somebody that can transform our fortunes to a degree and give us something extra. And I really hope it's somebody that is brought forward from the summer. Be that a Benjamin Sesko, be that a Nico Williams, be that just somebody that Arsenal are obviously keen on. And, I've said to you myself, I mean, Tom says, Fabrizio said yesterday that Arsenal have made calls to important players across Europe in the last few days. What do you think will happen? I've told you that Arsenal have been active. I've told you that Arsenal are making the moves that they need to move. We just need to find and come to kind of a finite conclusion on who we think is not only the best player available for us, but the player that is going to, be able to take us to that next level. We can't just sign anybody, and we shouldn't just sign anybody. Let's talk about those Declan Rice comments about transfers as well. Let's see if I can find where he says what he says about transfers. He says, look now, obviously, I think we've lost Gabby. He's probably going to be out for a year with an ACL. That's really tough. I'm sure that the manager's probably going to look for something, because tonight we've had to bring on Tierney at left wing. We've had to bring Zinni on at left wing. We're a bit short up that end, so I'm not surprised if we're going to probably do something. I believe in our strikers. I believe in our front players. You know that you could see the reception before the game for Kai. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, the cheer that he got and what he's done for this team, the goals he scored at important times this year. And I'm never going to knock anyone. We need the full support for all of our players, because now we're going to be in a crucial part of the season. And it was a big chance to win tonight and close the gap a little bit more. So just on the transfers, we'll talk about the Kai stuff as well. It's interesting, isn't it, seeing a player come out and be like, look, I think the manager's got to do something, or going to. He doesn't say got to do something. He says, I think the manager, Arteta's going to do something. Because we can all see how short we are. Darbas says Vlahovic now or Sesko in the summer. Sesko in the summer. I mean, I was sent a reel of Vlahovic's misses for Juve, and it's funny how people moan about Havertz missing loads of chances. Go have a look at the chances that Vlahovic has missed. My goodness me. He's had an absolute nightmare in Juve, it seems. Some of the chances he's not taken. Goodness gracious me. People moan about Havertz. Well, you'll be moaning about Vlahovic soon if you've seen that clip. But I think that with 2 weeks left, as long as we get the deals, however many it is, done before deadline. We've got games against Villa at home. We're not going to get a signing in before then. You've got a game against Dinamo Zagreb, and you've got a game against Wolves away. I'd hope that maybe by Wolves Maybe by Wolves. You've got the away trip to Girona, which could see a new signing potentially be bedding in that game, which would be good. But you've got to get the deals done before Man City on February 2nd, surely. Surely you've got to get those deals done. I mean, obviously you have to get them done. The transfer window's closed by that point, but surely we're looking at that game thinking you want to get a deal done so you can get that player bedded in and playing some minutes for us before that match against Man City. That's a humongous threat on the horizon, isn't it? So I'd love to see the deals get done. We will keep you up to date with everything that's going on in regards to the situations on the market as and when they arise. But it's looking more positive than it did a week ago. There's a much more positive feeling about the idea of Arsenal doing business this winter than there was a week ago. And I'm just hoping that we start to see some names emerge from the crowds in these coming weeks. I want to talk about Rice's comments, though, about Havertz as well. I think they've been misinterpreted quite a lot. So Havertz, he says, he was asked if he thought that Kai had been unfairly scapegoated. And Rice said, yeah, definitely. But I think there's a social media perception that people think. And then when you come into the stadium and you actually hear the real fans and what they think, two different things. The cheer he got tonight, was ridiculous. It was the loudest cheer of the night. And when his name got called out, you could tell that it meant a lot to him. He just fights and things. The cheer he got tonight, was ridiculous. He fights for 90 minutes. It does it week in, week out. All right, yeah, he might not score every week, but what he does for the team is the most important thing, and he's been brilliant for us. He was asked about the respect that the players have in the changing room for him, and he said, for sure, 100%. Like, he can play the 9, he can play 8, he can play 10, he can play on the wing, he can play in so many positions, and he knows every position to such a high level. You need players like that, especially under this manager. He'll give anything at any time. Like I said, tonight he played really well. And the most important thing was the derby win, which is massive. Now, Havertz had 2 chances in this game, 2 particular headers. One was from a corner, which was headed just agonisingly wide of the right upright. And the other header, of course, I think it was from a Partey cross, which was headed straight at Kinski. A slight angle on those headers and he scores 2 goals on the night. And that's the fine margins between a 2-goal performance and a 0-goal performance. But outside of that, his performance was solid. He didn't really put a foot wrong, to be honest, and nearly won a very early goal after that tackle on the Spurs goalkeeper. So, look, we need more. He's not the answer to Arsenal's centre forwards calling for the long term. He's not the guy that takes Arsenal to the title at centre forward for me. I think he certainly contributes a lot, and I think he can be part of a title-winning squad. I'm just not sure whether or not he's. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's not. That guy that is going to be the Arsenal centre forward. Now, Liverpool have won the league without a recognised centre forward. So have Manchester City. But I think if this Arsenal team is going to, you're going to need that player. You're going to need that player. And I think you're also going to need players like Havertz in the squad. You're still going to need players like that can contribute, and he has contributed. Now, the comment that Rice made about social media fans, and he said, when you come to the stadium and actually hear the real fans and what they think, I think people have taken that way too literally. It's very obvious what he means. It's very obvious that he's talking specifically about the fans that hide behind keyboards. And then when you hear people face to face, when you hear what people think in the flesh, the reaction is very different. It wasn't a slight on fans around the world. It wasn't a slight on fans that can't attend games. I think people have taken that way off board, and run with it. You could argue he could have put it maybe in a better way, sure. But if you really believe it was his intention, if you thought that it was his intention to somehow scold fans that just aren't in stadiums, or that the only fans that are real fans are those that are in the ground, that's obviously not what he means. It's in the context of comments that have been made online behind the keyboard, as so many people sadly do these days, and are so scared to ever say anything face to face. It's the difference between that, and it's the difference between fans that, and people that would say things and how they react in person. The reality is that in person, the fans got behind Havertz. The fans gave him a huge cheer, and as a result, it was a really, really good feeling, I think, as well. Ray Beam says keyboard fans make up 98% of the fan base. Thankfully, that is not the case. Darbas says it was a diss at the vocal minority, and I'm an international fan. It did not offend me one bit. Exactly. It was a diss at those horrible little melons. just absolutely embarrass themselves constantly with their horrendous grammar more than anything else. Adam says, Tom, make a current Arsenal 11 with out of position Arsenal players. Out of position Arsenal players. Well, goalkeeper's going to have to be someone mad, is it not? Who produces the most off the line clearances? That would probably have to be. I'm not going to go through an entire 11. That would take forever. But I see the point of the question. We have a lot of players that can play out of their usual positions. Lee says, great result, but chances missed only highlights what we need before the window closes. Stephen says, let's be honest. With the stuff that was said to Kai's partner, I'm surprised the players don't come out and say a lot worse. It was great to see that Declan was backing Kai. Roy says, Tom, is it more mind the Grand Canyon rather than mind the gap? Just the 19 points to Tottenham at the moment. Yeah, St. Totteringham's Day will be coming, I think, early this year once again. Emily says, true, a diss on the hyper noisy minority. I'm also an international fan and I'm not offended one bit. Ashley says, is Myles Lewis-Skelly the chosen one? Last time I had that feeling of an 18-year-old, it was with Saka, Saliba, an 18-year-old with a brain of a 30-year-old player, physicality of an ox and calm superiority that verges on boredom at times. He's and has been absolutely brilliant. Myles Lewis-Skelly. It's the intelligence of his game. It's the smarts. It's the footballing brain that he possesses that impresses me so much, alongside his strength and his attitude as well. James says, with Josh Kroenke in London, does Mikel Arteta need to rehire the pickpocket to steal Josh Kroenke's checkbook? Tabani says, I live in Australia. I've been to a live game once and I heard his comments and never felt they were aimed at overseas fans at all. Harif says, the only people who are hurt by Rice's comments are definitely the people who talk about Havertz in a bad way. Absolutely. 100%. Soup says, both Rice and Odegaard keep getting chances on their weak foot because they are inverted with Saka and White out. Do you think it's worth them switching sides? Odegaard on the left is not something I like, Soup, to be honest. It's not something I like to see. It's not something I think we will see. I think it's a system thing that you don't want to upset the balance of. Jackie says, Tom, do you think in terms of finances we have a realistic chance of getting Isak in the summer? Sadly, I don't think so, Jackie. I don't necessarily because our finances are bad. I just think it's more to do with the price that Newcastle were going to ask for, which he isn't worth that. He's brilliant. He's an elite level striker, but he's not worth the money that it would cost to sign, especially with the concerns of his injuries as well, which you know are going to just hit different at Arsenal. Grayson says, with how long it takes many players to adapt and get up to speed, looking at Kai taking 6 months to get up to speed, do we really think that we have to get a signing to save our season? Yes, I think we do, Grayson, because of just it's more to do with numbers as well. It's not just to do with what that player is going to provide to us, but it's about numbers. That's also really important. Ryan says, Tom, what's the bare minimum you want to see this window? We need a forward player, preferably a finishing striker. Given that, would you take someone like Evan Ferguson on loan to get us over the line? I don't think I'd take the loan of Evan Ferguson. No, I think I'd want someone who's got, unless there was like an option to buy in that deal. But I don't think that would be the case. Richard says, I unfollowed Eduardo Hagen last night. His comments were completely out of... Yeah, I think I blocked him the other day. Horrible tweeting. Daz Tingo says, were you worried about how easily Tottenham broke through our midfield? We seem to let them get all the way to our box as well. As the same amount of worried that I've been about other teams doing a similar thing. We're so good at kind of shutting teams out for so much of the game that when it happens, it makes it feel like there is an ease to it because we stop it so often. But I didn't like how we stood off. Partey really worried me at the times with how much he stepped off of the players that were attacking the box, and ultimately it led to a chance in the first half that was really poorly defended in the end. And I think it was the corner that eventually led to the Spurs goal. So that was not ideal either. Hussein says it was refreshing to see players moving the ball a lot faster last night, hoping this continues for the rest of the season. Raybeam says, Big Ange saying he never questions ref decisions in response to Arteta and then complains every week a month later. Great Ideas says, Havertz is a good player. If there are good strikers and wide players, he gives stability to the team. The problem always emanates from expecting many more goals from him. Culture Mark says, apologies, TC, you've answered it already. I've just joined the stream. What's your view on Sterling's performance? Yeah, we did a whole slide on Sterling, Mark, so make sure you tune in for that when you get to it. Haj says, would you take a Sesko and Nusa? No, I'd just take Sesko, personally, Haj. I'm coming around a lot more on the idea of Sesko. He's starting to deliver more, and I'm seeing a lot more of what I want to see. Clive says, we gamble on man-to-man pressing, and it creates our second goal, but at times we do look open at the back. Did people notice as well that Spurs left 2 players up from corners? Do you remember? I think there was few people saying, Arsenal's set pieces are going to be undone. All you need to do, put an extra man up from corners, and it stops Arsenal scoring from set pieces. It's that simple, guys. It's that simple. All you need to do, chuck an extra man up there on the halfway line, and we won't score from set pieces. Oh, wait, Gabriel's at the back post, and we've scored another goal. Obelix says, someone like Gyökeres in that box yesterday would have had a field day. We seem to be stuck on trying to get Isak. I don't think we are stuck on trying to get Isak at all, Obelix, to be honest. I've heard nothing to suggest that we're kind of fixated on Isak or that's going to happen. I've not even heard anything to suggest that that's even going to be something we try. So, no, I don't think that's the case. Basha says, what do you think of the signing of Zubimendi? Says about how Arteta sees Rice. Zubimendi can only play as a 6, and he'll definitely not sit on the bench. Does that mean Rice will be our left 8? I think that's the most likely scenario now, is that our starting 11 will be Rice, Zubimendi at the 6, and Odegaard as the advanced 8. That would be our starting midfield. Jorginho and Partey are leaving. We have to bring in a player. Honestly, I know that the mood was low before the derby, but it was astonishing yesterday, some of the rhetoric I was reading about. The best defensive midfielder on the market that Arsenal could sign, and it's looking very, very positive that Arsenal will land Zubimendi. I was stunned. I know you guys want forwards. I know you guys desperately want that striker, but sometimes you've got to put your pride and your ego to one side and take a step back and look at the bigger picture of what Arsenal have done. They are looking at doing business early for a player that isn't available now, something we've wanted them to do for time. Arsenal take too long. They leave it too late. They don't do business quickly. Arsenal are in the market for a summer transfer that is arguably the best in his position that is on the market that we could bring in to replace Partey and Jorginho. And people are still whinging and whining. Yes, we need forwards. And I have confidence that we're going to, in these 6 months, we're going to attack that. That, for me, is it. Josh, Tom, are you going to credit Partey for making that world-class tackle? Josh, you must have missed what I said earlier. Josh, you've been away for a little while. Partey's had a few poor games, and I think you've been missing for those. I think you went missing the other week in particular. But you've got to be consistent, mate. You've got to show up when he's good. You've got to show up when he's bad. Otherwise, it does come off like a bit of an agenda. Ty says, did you not think that we looked tired yesterday? In the second half, players were struggling to run back, which left space in the middle of the park. Trossard comes off. He's slow, coming for a Spurs attack as well. Again, I think Clive is right on this. You know, it's the style. It's the style of play. That's the big thing here. Tebow says, not convinced by Zubi. Anytime I've watched him play, he was okay in less physical matches, but trust the masses on this one. I mean, yeah, there's a reason why all the elite clubs have been trying to sign him. I think that makes it fairly obvious how highly rated he is. Mohammed says, I have a good feeling about Sesko. Don't worry, guys. Anthony says, Tom, congrats on Zubi, but we still need an attacker. Rich says, I heard there's going to be an announcement if this vid gets 1,000 likes. I'm loving that, Rich, but I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon and fool anyone. Mitch says, Lewis-Skelly winding up Spurs fans gave me Walcott, Wilshere and Saka vibes. Love to see the passion and how proud he is to wear the badge. It just makes us fans love him so much more. Clive also points out that we are knackered. How we are getting through this schedule, I don't know. And it's very true. There's a reason why we have to camp in the opposition's half, because if we're in a kind of box-to-box, end-to-end type game, it's not going to suit us. That break for the fourth round of the FA Cup that we're now out of, which I'd rather be in, yes, 100%, but that could end up being a big blessing for us. That could end up being a really, if we can navigate these games through to that fourth round weekend, which is, there's some really hard games before that. Really hard games. Villa at home, Wolves away, City at home, Newcastle in the League Cup second leg. There's some really hard games there before that 10-day break that we get. But I think that we absolutely have to use that gap as like a 5-day trip just to give the players some rest and relaxation and recuperation. There does need to be a significant gap, you know. We will be playing on Wednesday, the 5th of February, and then we're back playing away at Leicester on the 15th. And then it's West Ham, and then it's Forest, and then it's United, and then it's Chelsea. That's a really tough run. Forest, Man United, Chelsea, 3 games. But then there's a real run of opportunity for Arsenal, you know. There's a real run of opportunity for Arsenal. So after that Newcastle game in the League Cup, you got Leicester, West Ham, Forest, Man United, Chelsea, Fulham, Everton, Brentford, Ipswich, Palace, Bournemouth. And then on May 10th, Liverpool. On May 18th, Newcastle at home. And on May 25th, away from home at St Mary's. Strap in. There's a long way to go in this season. And I'm looking forward to it all of a sudden. Josh says, Tom, there are many channels. I can't be only attending yours. Also, but it seems you're only here at certain times, Josh. That's all I'll say, mate. You weren't here after certain games, and it showed. It showed. I don't forget. I've got an elephant's brain. I don't forget these things. King says, another key reason why we need players in now is the team is tired and need rotation. Hopefully Ben and Ethan are back soon. Yeah, I think Ethan's absence has been really forgotten about quickly, and it shouldn't. Pat says, Tom, how was the first North London derby in the new role? Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. It's the first North London derby I've been at as a journo. I've obviously been to plenty as a fan in the past, but it's the first one I've ever worked because I'm usually working them from home. But yeah, it was exciting. It was different. It was an atmosphere. It was. It didn't feel like a North London derby when I arrived. I'll say that as much. I didn't have the usual feeling of a derby. Lee says, Tom, how do we beat Villa? Score more goals than them. To quote Michael Owen, I think is all we need to do is just score more goals than them. Is that not the way forwards? It probably is. Paul says, which is why we need another forward desperately. We're reaching an emergency stage. Mark says, Osimhen has been off the radar, having been shipped off to Turkey. I think Napoli wants to see the back of him for less money than before. Do you fancy him for Arsenal? I'm just not convinced. I'm just not convinced on Osimhen. I can't help it. It's just something there. There's just a block with him that I just can't get over. Forever and Arsenal fans, is any reason we're doing Zubi in the summer rather than now? Because I think that we will play. I think we'll pay slightly more than the release clause to pay more favourable terms for Real Sociedad, who will only sell in the summer. I think that's the reason. I think that's why we would do that in the summer and not now. And I think that the player also has to be thought about, in those situations too. Marvin says, harsh on Sterling. Let's remember he hasn't played any consistent football for the past half season, just come back from injury, and let's be supportive and give him some time. Matt says 3-1 win at St James's Park and we'll go through on penalties, so we'll have to play the Leicester match midweek in March. You heard it here first. Ryan says, do you think it would be more prudent to go after a top winger instead of a striker, perhaps a Cunha or a Coman? I don't know. Ryan. I think that it depends on the player. I don't think we're signing the striker in January unless suddenly we drop the money on a Sesko release clause. I just don't. I don't see it. I still predict a wide forward that's versatile that would be the player that we look to sign. Basher says, you definitely sound more chiefy now, Tom. All the best, my friends. Cheeky comment, Basher. I appreciate that. Brendan says, even though he didn't have a great game, can we please talk about what Trossard did to Porro? Yeah, oh my goodness me. I thought Porro's leg had just kind of gone to another stratosphere where Trossard completely swerves the guy. I really hope Trossard's goal brings more out of him now. I really hope that it's lifted his confidence, because it was nice to see him score and celebrate like he did. I know there's a lot of discourse around Trossard's attitude and how Arteta called him a bit of a moaner, but I really hope that lifts him. It was nice to see him celebrate and give it to the Spurs fans as well. It's always nice to see that. Where's that question gone? Boston says, does Sesko have a release clause? To my understanding, it's a gentleman's agreement, is what I'm told. There's an agreement about a certain type of deal that if it comes forward from a certain club, and I think one of those would be Arsenal, that they would allow him to go. I don't know if that's the case for January, though. That's the only issue with that. Ruben says Sesko is the one for me. I just think of all the quality that's come out of the Red Bull outlet in the past. Quality ball striking in areas in and around the box is unreal, which we need. Ty says buying targets of Mendy according to Fishahes. He's been a target of a lot of teams, Tyser. Arsenal are not the only team that are keen on him, but that was a very, very committed article from Sammy to say Arsenal are to land him in the summer. Is a very committed piece, a very committed thing. And I think it's got, from what I've heard, there is a lot of reason to be optimistic, around that, certainly. Raditya says, at this point, we should just go for Van Persie or Van Bommel's son. Both are 1.85 meters, wingers and strikers that are 19 years of age. Just bringing all the giants to the club. That's what we need. That is what we need. Also, by the way, it was really nice to see some fans. I met up with Mike before the game and Harry and Potsy as well, and saw some listeners of the channel. So if you're watching, thank you for saying hello. It was so nice to meet some of you. I think Luke and Sam and some others as well. Good morning to you all. And thank you so much for saying hello. It's very nice to see people that enjoy the content of the channel and kind of get it. Some of the conversations I was having with people, you could tell that they kind of get the difference between... In a way, it was kind of similar to what Kai Havertz said. I get a lot of abuse. It's part and parcel of what I do. I try not to let it get to me too much, but it is hard. But when you get people actually coming up to, I'll be very honest, I've had no one ever come up to me that said anything horrible about me in the chat, ever. And that doesn't mean that you should now. But whenever anyone's come up and said hello, they know me from the channel, it's never any of the horrible comments you see in chat boxes. It's never any of those people. And that should probably be what I look on and take on board more than the little keyboard trolls that you get. So yeah, I think that's probably the way forwards. Anyway, I think we'll end the show there. I'm going to bask in the glory of a victory. I'm going to bask in the glory of a win in the derby, and I'm going to go enjoy writing a fair few pieces today about that, and looking ahead, of course, to the weekend, and looking at the transfer window and the forwards that Arsenal could sign during this window. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate your listening. Really appreciate your time. I hope that you will be with me tomorrow morning for another show. There's a press conference. Let me just check. I'm doing that worrying thing now where I'm like, oh, hold on. It's Friday tomorrow, which means I'm at another press conference, but I need to check when that is. So I need to tell you whether or not it will be a normal show or not. Aston Villa press conference is at 1, so there will be a normal show. So I'll be back with you tomorrow morning bright and early, 8 a.m. For another show before, of course, heading off to another Arsenal press conference. Have a fantastic day, people. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe, stay well, stay very happy indeed, and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.